I'm Steve Peacock. I'm here to talk to you about leadership, small businesses, and everything from my experience that relates to that. Now, this one here is a little bit different. I haven't been a murderer. I haven't been locked up or incarcerated in a maximum security prison, but I have been there very often. I used to go in there very regularly. Let me tell you what the situation was back in 2000. I felt that I was hitting a roadblock. I felt that I wasn't growing. I felt that nothing that I did, it was all related on things that I've done before. And I wasn't getting any new experiences. So I needed to step outside my comfort zone. Now, I don't recommend this to everybody, but I felt that the furthest outside my comfort zone was prison. Now, my church had a prison ministry that went into prisons once a week or once a fortnight just to talk to prisoners. Now, I joined that, and very soon I was pretty much the only person going in and out there or with other groups from other churches. What happened there was a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of stuff. After a couple of years, I realized I was learning too much from this prison, and it was the only place to learn. And sometimes you've got to look at your surroundings and saying, am I learning from the best places? So after a couple of years, I retired from that and went back into business again. Tell me about the first time. I arrived in prison at the maximum security prison. We had to empty our pockets and everything else was all locked away, and we were led through these hallways. Now, I found that I was immediately assigned to what they used to call C block. It's all changed now. But in C block, that was the maximum area of the maximum security. It's the lifers. Now, when I got to my allotted place, I ended up being pretty much on my own. Guard let me in to this big room. There was windows way up the top there, but otherwise it was only bars and concrete. Waiting around what's happening, wondering when the guards would come in and support me in there. And next thing you know, the doors opened again and in piled a whole pile of prisoners. Now, these are people with records. These are people that you've met before in the news for all the wrong reasons. So they all filed in, they took a look at me and all sat down. And I thought, where's this guy with a machine gun? Nothing actually happened there. Now, was I going to get torn to pieces? What was happening? There was tattoos all the way up their necks and over their faces, and really, really hard people there. So they sat down, and I ended up talking to them. After a while, I found out that I was probably in the safest person in that prison because they're people who don't get people visiting. Their family had given up to them. If they ever had family in the first place, most of them didn't. They were quite keen to have somebody in, and they would protect me with their lives if need be. I spoke to them, and it was quite an experience for me. After 18 months or so, one of the old guy from the back stood up halfway through my talking to them, and he came out the front to me, stood in front of me, grabbed my wrists. Normally, what they do is when they're in prison, a handshake is them grabbing you up your arm there like that. So that's a handshake to them. And he gave me what you call a hongi, which is nose to nose touch and forehead to forehead. That's it. And then stepped back, and I suddenly realized they were all lined up. Every one of them. There were about 25 to 30 that were there at that time. And from that moment on, I was allowed into all the rest of the prisons. I had trust. It took a while, and I realized what was happening here. What's so big about trust? And here's the leadership lessons that I'm learning. What's so big about trust? If you knew these people's background, and I was starting to get to know them, their backgrounds were all about non-trust. There's a saying that says, nobody on death row is guilty. Every person there is innocent. Now, what do I mean by that? They're there because they've done some horrible things. But And to them, it's not theirs. It's somebody else's problem. Somebody else did something. I remember now, I'm always very careful not to identify people that I meet in there. But I remember one who's the equivalent of stopped on his way home from going out with his mates, stopped at a random house, walked in, shot three people dead, and left a fourth crippled for life. Now, he was there for obvious reasons, but he was always saying it wasn't him. They should have actually arrested the guy that made him angry. They should have arrested somebody else who said something to him that made him go out and do it, because he's a real, genuine, nice guy. He wouldn't do this for any other reason but that somebody else made him angry. Now, this is the thing. A lot of people grow up thinking that everybody else causes all the problems in the world. Now, I think it was Roosevelt that said, if you had to kick the person in the pants responsible for all your troubles, you wouldn't be able to sit for a month. And these people take years sometimes to realize that they might have had some small amount of say in what they did. It takes a while because they're used to being blaming somebody else. A lot of their people they look up to, which usually is sadly the wrong people, gangs, gang leaders, all those sort of things. They're always blaming everybody else for everything. They never take responsibility for what they do. Let's turn that round to a team working in an organization. Now, it might be your small business team, might be a large organization with one of the teams that you're leading. You may come across occasionally somebody who cannot take responsibility for what they're doing, who cannot take orders or take suggestions from you. And the fact of you asking them to do something would mean that that's what they wouldn't do. This is this lack of trust that we get occasionally, and that comes through. You see, trust, when you're a young person who's brought up perhaps in the wrong circumstances without parents, going through from family to family, chucked around, they can trust three times before something rewires in their brain. So when they lose trust the first time because somebody said, we'll look after you, and they don't, then that trust is gone. But they can shift that around saying, oh, that was just that person. The second time, they have more difficulty with that. But they can eventually, if they're nurtured enough, trust again. And when they lose the third time, the brain rewires. They will never be able to trust again. So a lot of those people can never trust. They just don't. And you will find that there's people in organizations who've lost trust with management, have lost trust with the organization, have lost trust with leadership. So they will never trust a leader. They will never trust you. There's just nothing you can do about it. It's simply inbuilt. Their minds have been rewired to not trust. Now, there's another way you can tackle this. How do you solve this problem? If you want to make a change in your organization, if you want your team to be a absolutely wonderful go-ahead team that really has that ownership mindset to do all sorts of amazing things, and you've got this one or two people there who do not trust you and will not do it. So what can you do? Well, there's a saying that you've probably heard, honor among thieves. And in the prison, there is this, and that's the other thing that I learned, is that they won't trust me. They'll smile, and they'll shake my hand, and they'll do all these other bits and pieces and tell me all sorts of things, but they won't trust me because I'm in a leadership position there. But what they do trust is people on their own level. You may have seen movies, etc., that are actually right. People will die for a person they trust, in a gang, for example. They can trust, but they can't trust leadership. And that's where you are, unfortunately. You're a leader, and you've got a team there with somebody who can't trust. But taking that lesson, they can trust others on their level. They can trust their team work with it, work with the rest of your team. These people might end up coming along. Now, to give you an example, I remember one time I had a team lead come to me, a Scrum Master. He said two of his team members are causing him sleepless nights. They wanted to make a change, and it was a change towards agile. And I was leading that change through all the Scrum Masters around, and for many teams that were there. And this team leader came to me and said two of his members had even gone as far as sitting with him and holding up their job descriptions and saying, where on my job description does it say I have to go agile and use all these meetings and Scrum and all the rest of it? And he was at his wit's end. There's nothing he can do. So I said to him, what you're saying is, well, how the rest of the team coping with this? And he's saying the rest of the team are marvelous. They want to change. They want to come along. They want to be part of all this. They see value in what we're doing. It's just these two team members. So he had quite a large team of about 10 people there. So two out of that 10 wasn't too bad, but two can actually, destroy it. A bad fruit can affect all the rest of the fruit in the bowl. I was at my wit's end. I couldn't figure out what to do. I said to them, it sounds like these two members of your team have decided not to be team members. If all the other team members are going off and doing this and these two don't want to do it, then they're not part of the team. What I suggest is you change that, you make that, you accept that. They're not going to be part of your team. Now, here's what you can do. Tell them that you accept that they're not going to be going agile. You accept that they're not going to be with the rest of the team, but that means you're not part of the team. Let them know the reason that that's happening in a reasonable way, and then assign them work. We still need them. They're good people. Assign them work on a normal basis as if they're external contractors. Say to them, here's the work I want you to be done, and please get that done by Friday. Now, exclude them from any of your team meetings. Exclude them from the stand-ups, exclude them from the going out to coffee, exclude them from your morning teas, everything else like that, and your other meetings, because they're not part of it. They're not part of the team. Now, I fully expected that those two team members would start job searching at that point. If they're going to disrupt a team, then that is a problem that you have to actually work through. Hopefully, we can work it through because team members are valuable. What actually happened, what really surprised me, is that only a few days later, the team members came up to this team lead and said to him, we want to be part of the team again. We'll accept that. We'll do everything that you want us to. We'll come to all these stand-ups and all these other meetings that you have. We want to be part of the team again. And so their attitude changed. Now, what happened is that they accepted the authority of their peers, and they accepted what their peers are doing, so they became part of their peers. They wanted to be on the fun side. That was their idea. So take a look at that. There are some people around who cannot and will not take suggestions or instruction from anybody who they perceive is in a leadership position, but they'll die for their teammates. So go for it. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Please click that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.